Alright, I suppose I should get started, because otherwise I always take too long anyway. My name is Shannon Campo, like the compost pile, so that I hope you say it correctly, because everyone says it wrong in Grand Rapids all the time. It's French. This is my husband Timothy, so he's my IT guy and my cohort and the compost in our shenanigans. I am a master gardener, which means I took the course through MSU, and I do a lot of volunteer work and teaching and things like that. And then I got my certification in horticulture as well. All right, so this class is about seed saving. So what is a seed? There's no wrong answer. Oh, the answer's already there. So I think my arrows, my things aren't working. Seed's a plant embryo, so it's the baby. It has everything it needs to grow, and it has everything it wants to grow. It wants to grow is the key. A seed wants to grow. So all we have to do is provide it with just enough to make that happen. Okay. There's cotyledons are the little baby leaves, and so you have a monocot and a dicot, which are your two kinds of seeds. Mono is one, single stem, so that's your corn and grass and things like that. Bean, which is the example here, is a di, two. So it has two leaves, so it's always coming out with two things. They are different enough that different herbicides will only affect one type of plant rather than another, so you can have things you spray on grass, it doesn't kill, it kills everything but the grass. And you have other things that you can spray that kills everything. So it depends on the structure of the plant, how it takes up nutrient and what happens to it. So in this case, your seeds actually look different, and they look different as they grow. So that's interesting to know sometimes when you see something growing and you're like, what is that? You can kind of figure out where you're coming from just by looking at the seeds and the little cotyledons, which are your first two leaves, and they don't usually look anything like the true leaves, which come later. Any questions about that? There's a little bit of biology there for you. Okay, why are seeds important?
We need to eat.
If the seeds all went away, we would be very close afterwards. Yeah, we need them to grow new plants, need to eat everything on the planet that is a plant, came from a seed, except for the gymnosperms, of course, and the ferns and stuff, but everything comes from a seed. And things you would never think of having a seed, have a seed and flower, and like houseplants. You're like, oh, that doesn't have a seed. It does. It's really cool, some of the different stuff. So what is a fruit? And of course it has the answer up there already. Fruit is anything that has a seed. So, is a tomato a fruit? Yes. Is corn a fruit? Yes. Corn is the fruit, yep. Yeah. Is a cucumber a fruit?
Yep.
Yes. Is a potato a fruit?
No.
No. No. That's a tuber, it's a root, right? Yep. Okay, so anything that has a seed is a fruit. So the majority of the things we call vegetables are actually fruit. And I always get into arguments with people. They're like, yeah. I'm like, that's not a vegetable. And then I can go off on the whole reason why it's not a vegetable and what the government did and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, a fruit is anything that has a seed. So is a coconut a fruit?
It is the fruit.
It is the fruit, yes. You get a big husk thing, and the thing we usually get is actually the seed. So there's some really crazy things out there that are fruit. Let's see. Angiosperm is just simply plant, the type of plant, not a gymnosperm, which is the cones. It's the green things. Okay, so we know what a seed is. Now we're talking about a particular kind of seed with a hybrid. So what is a hybrid, and what's the big deal about a hybrid when you want to save seed? So here you see a picture, and you see mom and dad up there, P1 and P2, and they put them together and they have a baby. And this baby has very, very specific traits and characteristics because they want them to. Mom and dad equals this baby that is, let's say it's a tomato, and it's a little golden yellow cherry tomato. What's that?
Sun golds.
Sun golds, yes. Those are hybrid, and they are amazing. They are wonderful, they're orange and they're juicy and they're sweet and they pop when you eat them and they're really prolific and they're yummy, yummy tomatoes. And they've been extremely hard to grow out true. They still have not perfected that one. So this hybrid tomato is amazing. But every time we take that seed and we plant it, we have not gotten a plant to exhibit those character traits that we love in this little tomato consistently all the way down the line. And so generally when you plant seeds from a hybrid, you're going to get maybe 10 to 20% of what you actually want of that plant. So say this little cherry tomato had 100 seeds in it, right? Are you seriously going to save and plant all 100 seeds?
No, you don't know which time to say it.
Great. So okay, so you planted 50 of them. What if you didn't get an even spread of that thing and only 2 of them were the ones you actually wanted? You know, and so to go about and breed a true return, like a true, my brain's cooked today, breed a seed that comes true to what its parent was. It takes about 7 years and 7 generations, and they're dealing with hundreds of seeds at a time to pull out those character traits that they really, really want. It's a big deal. However, if you buy a seed or you get a plant, and if all is a hybrid, don't even try. I mean, you can, but you're not going to get a seed that's true to that plant, what that is. And so hybrids aren't bad. Hybrids have some amazing character traits. That first generation has something called hybrid vigor, and it means it's like a super plant. It's raring to go. It's got great character traits, and it's usually got very good disease resistance. But all the ones after that, like tank, they're just not doing well. And so that's why they keep making the hybrids, because it has that hybrid vigor. But also they make a lot of money off of it because you can't keep the seed. Then they get this, trademark product that they can keep selling. And seeds have a lot of money to it. Now, lots of things hybrid themselves naturally in the wild, in quotes. So if you have a daylily that's yellow and you have a daylily that's orange, they could mix. And if that seed was allowed to go and you planted it, you could have a short orange daylily or a tall red daylily, or you could have something mixed or something like that. And so daylilies are actually one of the most bred plants because they're so easy to breed. You have millions of different kinds of daylilies. They're not all named, but somebody told me there's something like 50,000 varieties of named daylilies, which is insane. And somebody's making money off of each one of those named daylilies.
Oaks daylily.
Yeah.
In Tennessee.
So hybrids aren't bad, just not great for saving seed. Okay, so what is this? If you were to guess.
Watermelon.
Pumpkin watermelon.
Yeah, I don't know, yeah.
That's what the middle looks like. That's not quite what we wanted. So this is the cucurbit family, which has your pumpkins and your cucumbers and different parts of your squashes. Not all squashes are curcubits, but quite a few are. And something mixed, and they saved the seed, and that is so disappointing. Because it probably doesn't taste that great, But, imagine growing that for months and months and months, and then picking it and slicing it over at the picnic, expecting this beautiful watermelon, and there you go. All right, so the smallest seeds on the planet come from orchids. Now, probably not these particular orchids, because those are mine, but orchids have dust. They weigh a 10 billionth of an ounce, and it's because orchids are aerial. They grow up in the trees. So the seeds have to be so light so they go up and spread around in other tree branches to germinate. And so I was just like, you can't even see it. It's literally dust. I've never gotten my orchids to make seeds, so one day maybe. The largest seed in the world is this. It's called a double coconut. World record is 92.5 pounds for the fruit. How'd you like that come crashing out of a tree on your head? And the seed inside is up to 38 pounds.
Jeez.
So this is a guy up there. They grow on an island out by Madagascar, and it's the only islands in the world where they grow. So they're obviously a very special tree. And they used to, these big coconuts would fall into the water and go floating around the world. And apparently they look like someone's backside. So the sailors on the boats would think that there was like a mermaid or something down there. They were on a boat a long time. They must have been really hard up to. But so they often have other nicknames that are reflective of that part. See, sir, you can get kind of risque with these. It's all about sex. Alright, so plants, annuals, live its entire life cycle in one season. So from growing, birth, and all the way to the end, it's one cycle. So if that cycle is up here, it's between the frost dates. If it's down in the tropical regions, it's going to grow and die in that whole one cycle. Generally, there are more annuals north because they have to get everything done in one season, whereas down in the tropics, they can grow forever and life is good. So we know a lot of annuals, like sunflowers an annual, petunias are an annual, all these kind of things. We also grow a lot of things that we think are annuals, but they're actually tender perennials. We just treat them like an annual. So when you're growing something, make sure you know if it's actually a perennial that will die at frost, or it's an actual annual that has its whole cycle. Because if you're waiting to get seed from something, and it's like, I got 10 years to grow, and you're like, why won't you give me seeds? That can affect it, and also how you grow it. So, what do I got? Tomatoes, flowers, pumpkins. Harvest seeds the same year you plant them. And then you have a biennial. Second year, you get a big tall stalk with a bunch of blooms on it, and then the whole thing goes kaput.
Hollyhocks.
What's that?
Hollyhocks.
Yes, hollyhocks is the picture on that side, and the other one is foxglove. I bought a foxglove one year. It was gorgeous. I planted it. The next year it didn't come back, and I was like, what did I do? I didn't do anything. It just did its thing, and it died. And unfortunately, it didn't set any seeds, so I didn't get any more.
I just planted 2 of those.
What's that?
I just planted 2 of those that are blooming, so I guess that's true for next year. Enjoy it while you can.
Enjoy it right now. Hope it sets seed. If it sets seed, then you can perpetuate the cycle. So with hollyhocks, a lot of times, the first year it's just a little mound, the second year it's gorgeous. Save some of the seed and start it that year, and then save some of the seed and hold back 1 year and start it then, and then you will start the either other cycle of flowering and new babies, and that way you always have seeds. So it's not always your fault that a plant dies. Sometimes it's just its time. And so artichoke is a biennial. It has to go through a cold cycle to set out the flower. Swiss chard sets seed the second year. Broccoli, kale, a lot of those all are second year. So if you're trying to get seed out of something and it will not set seed, then that might be one of the issues that you're having. It
So
has
it's
to
an
go through.
advanced seed saving.
You have to be able to be ready to put aside that plot for whatever's coming. You know, like, okay, this kale is going to live here for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I can't, when I'm rotating, can't dig up my kale.
Right.
Otherwise, I'm going to lose my seed. So yeah, it is more difficult to do the 2 years, not necessarily because the seed itself is difficult, but the timing of it is a little more difficult and thought has to go into it. And then your perennials, they will usually give you seed every year, but sometimes they require extremely specific things to grow. So echinacea needs to be stratified, which means it has to go through a cold cycle to germinate. If it doesn't go through that cold cycle, you will never, ever, ever, ever germinate echinacea. But when you toss out the dirt because you've finally given up into the compost pile, the next year you find a whole bunch of echinacea babies because it went through winter.
Well, around here it's pretty cold, so that's
Even
a
in,
problem.
well, see, a lot of times they sell echinacea seed, but they have not stratified it for you. So you in the spring go, oh, look at the beautiful white swan echinacea. and you plant all the seeds and nothing happens. That's where you have to find out, is this stratified or do I need to stratify it? And they don't always say on the package. So I've actually called seed companies and asked them, have you done the thing that needs to be done to this particular seed in order to make it germinate? And a lot of like the native seed companies and we'll say not the giant seed companies, but like the more smaller intentional ones, a lot of them will do that for you. They will have it stratified. So when you purchase it, it is ready to be started. A lot of the like Burpee and some of those big guys, I have never found that they have. I have to always do that on my own, which means you have to plan ahead. This has to be stratified for 3 months, which means it needs to go in the refrigerator in some cold, moist moss in a Ziploc bag. Timothy finds all sorts of good things.
If you're just taking
No food,
your
no.
sister-in-law's flower plant and
Yeah.
taking the head and spreading it in your yard,
In the
it's going to
fall.
get cold in the winter.
Yes, in the fall, yes. Yeah. So that is how normally it would work.
That's how normally I do it.
Yes, and
Go to my
that works
sister-in-law's.
great.
Steal something.
Yeah, and that works great. And there's reasons for that, because if the echinacea fell off the plant and it was a nice, lovely, perfect germination temperature, perfect moisture, perfect sunlight, perfect spacing, and it went, oh, I'm gonna grow, and it is September 27th when it decides to grow, what's gonna happen? It's hitting its first frost in a week or so, and it's gonna grow. So it's the plant's way of keeping track of time. And that helps it know when to actually grow. And so other things need things like scarification, which means you have to scar it, hurt it, break the seed pod. And generally that happens because it's either been eaten and gone through something's digestive tract, which the acid pulls it off, or it's gone through winter where it got frozen and thawed and cracked the carapace, or it's sat in the ground for who knows how long and worn down that seed coat. And that helps the plant also keep track of time and making sure it went somewhere different. The Kentucky coffee tree, I am so off track, but it was. The Kentucky coffee tree was actually eaten by the giant sloths that used to live in North America. And so now to germinate a Kentucky coffee tree, you have to subject it to something that is extinct now, and we're just guessing what the thing is. So now we do a lot of the coffee trees, they get cloned, you know, like you would with apples and stuff like that. But to start one from seed is really, really hard. And I actually have some Kentucky coffee seeds, and I have yet to get the shell of it to break under anything. They're like so hard. So I don't even know if they're viable anymore. So the seeds have to have things happen to them, and the perennials are the ones that you usually, I don't think I have any annuals that have any specific instructions with them, but perennials they do. So if you buy perennial seeds or you get perennial seeds, look it up and see what that plant wants. Generally the easiest thing is to toss them in the ground and let nature do what it would be. For me, I would be like, where'd they all go? Because if I'm trying to grow a flat of 25 echinacea for something that I'm moving somewhere else, that would be hard for me to keep track of. But if you just want echinacea to show up,
I need somewhere over there.
yeah,
Be free.
that's exactly perfect. That is right.
Before the goldfinches get out.
Yes, this is true. My echinacea always comes up in the worst spots, like in the cement trap, where I cannot get it out without destroying it, or, you know. All right, so how to harvest seeds. It depends on the seed. I found that a lot of times the answer to almost every question is, it depends. And then I ask like 5 more questions to determine what your situation is. So seeds, it depends. So right now I have a bunch of seeds I've collected from my garden. Whoa, which this one has a hole in it, that's not good. And we'll talk about like what you do. So this is, I have a walking onion, and this is the top. So I have all these little baby cloves, not cloves, but they're kind of like little bitty onion babies that came from my walking onion. So that's one kind. I have, does anybody know what this one is? It's native. right, it looks like a jester's hat.
Ooh, bleeding heart?
No? I can't know. Comes up early spring. It is columbine. Columbine. And so in columbine, each one of these little things is packed full of black seeds. So I stuck.
I remember as a kid getting those.
I stuck a whole bunch of them in here, and that's how I collected those seeds. This is larkspur, and so it has a whole bunch of pods that have a whole bunch of little seeds in it. And I just chopped a bunch of heads off and threw it in my bag. This one, anybody have a guess?
Grass.
No? It kind of looks like grass a little bit. This one's kale. So each of these has this long little bean-looking type thing, and inside of these tiny black seeds. The interesting thing is that my kale, my larkspur, and my columbine seeds are all tiny, round, black seeds. They all look the same. If you were to drop 4 of them into my hand, I'd be like, yeah, no, don't know. So that is something to remember when you start collecting seeds. Write the name on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't write the name on it, but I have the plant, so I'm like, I know what it is. But once I take these out and put them in a baggie, you gotta know. So like this one is Asian red mustard. This seed looks exactly like kale, probably because it's in the same family. It's a mustard, but what is the brassica? It's in the brassica family. So all the brassica seeds have their little black brown things. And I have it labeled, so I know what it is. I have a tomato. The difference between those seeds and the tomato is what?
Seeds are inside. Seeds are in the fruit.
Okay, seeds are in the fruit. What is a fruit? Mostly it's
Water.
yeah, squishy, it's wet. So these pods, these seed pods, these little fruits are all dry. So that makes how you collect the seed and how you deal with it totally different than one that's wet. Okay? So in a minute we'll go through like how to actually take care of that. So this is an apple and it's different, and then you've got some peas and beans here and they're different. So these are the dry ones, these dry out. These actually came from our garden at the library. So it depends. All right, so you don't have to know all the answers, which is great. You just have to know where to find the answers. And so then you sound really smart. So I have 2 books, Seed to Seed, which is a really good book. It goes through a bunch of probably the most common plants that you would do in gardens and tells you how to do it, when to do it, all the temperatures and stuff like that. Really good book. I think you can get that from the library. You can also order it online. If you're going to do a lot of seed saving, just buy it, because it's a really good thing. Seed Sowing and Saving is another book. I got it the first time from the library, really liked it, and I went ahead and got it. These books are, this one's 25. This one's 20. Oh yeah. And they have it in the library.
Today,
Yeah.
your library card holder.
That is the book checked out by Shannon Combo, so you could check out it.
That's funny. So yeah, if you ever, like, the bottom is the flower and the top is the seed of it. So I thought that's pretty cool.
I was populating my whole yard with a thistle plant this week. I cut it down today finally, but I had it up all season just because of the butterflies. And all, for like the past 2 weeks, the seeds have just been drifting.
I'm sorry.
Like I've just been populating the whole neighborhood with thistle.
You were evil. The thistle, was
There'll be
it?
more butterflies. I don't know, it was about 6 feet tall.
Canadian thistle, it's invasive.
Oh, it's invasive.
It's mean.
Sorry.
It is a wonderful butterfly plant. It's a great butterfly plant. It's I think it's a native, depending on which thistle it is.
We're close to Canada.
A prairie plant. All right, so tomatoes. How do you do a tomato seed? Lots of people want to save a tomato, and the tomato is extremely easy and kind of fun and messy, which means your kids will love it. So, like, this tomato is 7. This is one of my brandy wines. So, if you guys want to come and see, I'm going to pop open the tomato, and inside, oh, it's gorgeous, is all of the seeds. And so with a tomato seed, see this little gooey thing around it?
Yep.
That gooey thing is its protection. And as long as that gooey thing is there, it's not going to germinate. The only way to get rid of the gooey little sac around it is for it to ferment, which usually happens when it goes through decomposition. So, when you do your tomato seeds, you dump them all in a jar with a lid that fits snugly.
Totini jar.
Because you are going to ferment it. And what does fermenting do? Creates lovely smells. And so once you destroy your tomato, you pull out all those seeds. You then put the equivalent amount of water in it, and you swirl it all up, and it's going to create this lovely orangey mucky mess in your bottle. You put the lid on, and leave it alone for a day. Next day you come back, swirl it a little bit, leave it alone. Put it like in your pantry or in your cupboard where it's dark. And then it's going to make this absolutely gorgeous, ugly green, foamy fuzz stuff on it. That's good. That means it's fermenting. And the fermenting is taking away. He's like, you're weird. It's taking away that little sac of gel that's around each seed. And once it's done that, it takes usually, depending on how warm it is, it takes usually 3 to 5 days. If it's really cool at your house or you have air conditioning, it might take a week. But what you want it to do every time you swirl it is you're just sort of mixing it, and the seeds that are good will sink, the seeds that are bad will float, and all of the scum will float. And so when you open up the jar and hold your nose, you get off that top stuff, and the seeds that are all sunk, you wash them off, and then you put them on something that they are not going to stick to. So if you put them on a ceramic plate, or a piece of glass, or something that you can scrape them off of, that's great. If you put them onto a piece of paper towel, you will have just created seed tape. And it's a great thing, as long as you don't want that many tomatoes all that close. So that's one of the things to be careful of, is whatever you stick wet seeds that are drying onto, a lot of times they will stick to whatever it is, if it's a fabric or a paper towel or something like that. So stick it onto something like a plate or something glass, impervious, that they will just, scratch right off of. So I think I have it all written out exactly what we're supposed to do. But yeah, it says stir, just swirl it. Make sure you have the lid. You will all be mad at me if you don't. And the reason the things that are good sink is because that seed is fully formed inside, and it's heavy, and it's got all the stuff inside that makes it, all the nutrients that's fully formed. The ones that haven't finished growing, they're going to be light, and they're not going to have everything they need, so they'll be lighter than the water and they'll float. So it makes it really easy to get out the good seed from the bad seed for tomatoes. We'll get to a little bit more on there. And then make sure they dry.
Now, could you use, like I have a dehydrator that I can put down to like 95 degrees, and it's got a solid, like the kind used for making like food roll-ups or whatever. Is that a too high a temperature for them?
I think 112 is where you kill something.
Okay.
So as long as you keep it below that temperature, you're probably okay. Now if you're drying tons and tons of seeds and it's really, really humid and it's raining, that might be a really good way to do it. It usually only takes a day to dry on a plate. I wouldn't put it in the sun to dry because you will cook them. The whole idea, a seed is alive. So it's a really good point. If you put it in a dehydrator, it has to stay below cooking. And cooking starts at about 112. I would even, like 95 would be I'd be happier at that because you're farther away from cooking. Okay, peppers. Peppers are easy. Cut it open, scrape out all the seeds onto something and let it dry, and you are done. One thing though is the seeds mature after it changes color. So green peppers are actually immature pepper. When they turn red or yellow or orange or whatever color it is, that's actually a ripe pepper. And so if you pick seeds from a green pepper, you're not going to have viable seeds because it's not done, finished growing. It's just they found that people will eat green peppers, and so they made green peppers because it's shorter season and stuff. I don't like green peppers. To me, they're not done yet, so I want the red ones. I love the red ones and yellow ones. So just make sure that your fruit is actually done. And then they'll be down the center. If you are trying or doing hot peppers, wear gloves, do not touch your face, do not touch any other body parts.
Scratch your own body parts.
Yes. So yes, I've heard horror stories of gentlemen who worked with them and then went to the bathroom and then they cried. So yeah, just be really careful with some of the hot stuff. Squash. Squash is easy. Squash is also wet. So it has that little, have you ever pulled out all the seeds and you're like, slimy? You gotta get the slimy off to get it to dry. And so that's one thing where like you can take it between 2 paper towels or like 2 cloth washcloths and just go, and that will pull off that slime, and then it will dry. And you can dry them on paper, but it will still stick. So I usually just go with glass plates all the time. Your ceramic, and that will help it. Usually with squash, for winter squash, when you are eating a winter squash, it is ripe. But like if you're eating a zucchini, which is a summer squash, it's not ripe when you want to eat it. You want to harvest the seeds when you have like that baseball bat that nobody wants to eat. That's when it's getting happy and going to actually have the seeds you want in it. So the timing again for squash is what kind is it, and is it actually ripe? So like your butternut squash is ripe. My zucchini is not ripe unless it's a baseball bat.
Okay.
But that one's really pretty easy to do as well. Watermelon. Just tell your kids to spit into a bucket. You got your job done.
Of course, it's like these days, it's hard to find a watermelon that's got seeds in it.
It is. I don't consider the seedless watermelon is technically not a fruit, right? It doesn't have a seed. I don't think they taste that great. So I always go for the ones with the seeds.
Hard to make fruit salad with watermelon, though. It's good seeds.
Spitting out the seeds is half the fun. Especially when you have a person you can aim at. And then pretend like nothing. So we had one year, we have a deck on the back of our house, and so we'll all stand out there and we'll spit seeds overboard. And one year we had this watermelon grow, and it was the most amazing watermelon. And it gave us 3 watermelons. One was like 30 pounds, something like that. One was 25, and another one was real close to that. Just absolutely just awesome watermelons. And it grew just in the grass, and so Timothy started mowing his space around the watermelon. And I harvested them, and we called them the Big Spittoon. That's the name of them.
Was it like the hybrid vigor that you got? Or?
I don't know, because I could never get them to grow again like that. I should have like, so I keep telling us, just spit them overboard, hoping it'll happen again. But yeah, they're pretty fun. However, the watermelons do cross easily with other melons and things in their family. So be careful that your watermelon was grown only with other watermelons that were the same kind. Because otherwise you might get some interesting, like, the things are.
Aren't squash pretty hybridizers? Or like
Yes.
kind of parse off your garden to keep them pure?
Yes, so if you are intentionally saving seed from something, you have to make sure that nothing else in the vicinity is going to cross with it, or you put up a netting around it and you pollinate the plant, which is another way you could do it. Or you grow, say, this thing and only that thing, and then the next year you grow this thing and only that thing, and then you work it out like that. So a lot of times the people who are growing seeds have these cages set up over top of different beds, and then you see people inside pretending to be a bee, making all the pollination. So it's a lot of work to actually get good seed. And if you find like small mom and pop people who have good seed, I support them. Because it's a lot of work. And you know, $5 for a package of seeds. And like, you know how many hours and months went into making that package of seeds? It's a lot more than what you think. So yes, the cucurbit family, there's like cucurbit, and then there's the little tagline, pepita, and all those different family groups. They will only mix within that family group. So you can plant a pumpkin maximum, cucurbit maximum, next to a cucumber cucurbit pepita, and they won't mix. Like even if the bee went from this flower to that flower, it won't mix genetically because they're too different. But if you put a pumpkin, I can't remember my whole list. There's all the lists are in here. You don't have to remember them. If you plant something that will mix with it, it's not bad. You can do it. Just remember that if you want to collect seed that year from those plants. Or you can just tag one female flower and you make sure that it opens up. You beat all the bees to it. You pollinate. Not all flowers are true or perfect. Perfect means they have both male and female anthers and stamens in them. Some of them have male and female. Some of them need a completely different cultivar to germinate it. So it just gets more and more fun. Yay, peas and beans. These are fun. You kind of can't go wrong with these. They do not cross very easily because of the way the flower is formed. They often the flower will self-pollinate itself even if a bee is around. And so usually they don't cross too badly. So what you do is you let them go until they get really hard, and then you pick them. And so like with peas, we're used to eating them either like the snow peas, which are flat, or like you shell them, and they're nice and green and round. But to get the seeds from them, you have to let them go until they get really, really hard. And then with beans, depending on your kind of bean, you know, like the beans we like to just eat, green beans, those you have to let go and get really, really hard past any point of you ever thinking of eating them. But then there's other beans like kidney beans and pinto beans. Those kind of beans you recognize because they're hard beans already. Those seeds are what we actually eat. And so those you would let go. So one thing to keep in mind though is sometimes a lot of these annuals, if you let the plant go and make all the seeds, it goes, I'm done, I can die. And you're like, wait, I want some more. So what you can do is harvest, and then as you're starting to get towards the end of the season, pick out a few things that you want, like beans or actual bean pods or whatever, and like, I'm gonna leave these to go past what I would normally use, and then I can save those. And the plant's already giving you a bunch. So you're not shortening your harvest by the plant thinking it's happy and it's done.
I did that with a bean plant. It came up I had a community garden plot, and this bean came up, and it overtook 2 tomato cages, and it was growing great. I mean, at the end of the summer, the stalk on the thing was like this big, but I was picking like every day, and it had these there was like two pea pods or bean pods on each little, so I picked off one little corner and said, because I had no seeds, it came up on its own. And I just let that one corner just do its thing, and I got all those seeds at the end of the summer.
Cool.
And I still have beans from that one plant. I'm on my 3rd season now
Yeah, so
of
cool.
those.
Fun.
And they're good.
What color were the beans? What color were
They're a red bean, so I don't know what they are.
Purple
I don't know.
potted
I was going to send some to Ben up there at the
Okay.
small house and see if he could identify them, but yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah. It's like,
That's cool when things happen like that. You're like, yes, I didn't have to do anything. Okay. The peas and beans, they have to dry for a really, really long time. So make sure you do that. We made a really, really sad mistake. Timothy went and he picked beans and he put them all in bags and he did a ton of work on them. And he had like a pound of beans, but they got put in the bag and they weren't dry yet. And when we sealed the bag, we went back to it and they were all moldy. It was so sad. And so the whole bag was gone. The whole bag was lost. And so all that work that he did and the genetic information is all lost. And so with the peas and beans, you've got to make sure that they're dry before you put them in the bag because they will mold really easy. An easy way to do beans and peas, lima beans, is you pull the plant, yank it out of the ground, and hang it upside down and let it dry. And that will make everything turn brown and crispy. And then you beat it on the ground or in a bag and get out any. Do this in a day when like somebody just and you just.
I just put mine in a big bowl and just let them sit on the counter for a month or two. Once in a while, I just do like this to it to give it a little freshen, and that dried them out enough naturally, and then I finally shelled them.
Well, this is a way to shell them without having to shell them. And then you just pull out all the beans and the chaff, which is the plant, and the pods and stuff will be later. So different ways, there's no one way to do it.
Yeah.
So
I didn't have all that
independent
many, so it wasn't.
how much you're working. Yeah, it can be a ton or a little bit, but that's a really easy way, is just grab it, yank it out, and then you're not leaving it in the garden to get ugly. So cucumbers. This is when you would never ever dream of eating a cucumber because it's big and it's yellow and it's mushy and you're like, ew! That's perfect. That's when you want to get the seeds out of it. But you do not want to let your first cucumber go to that because the cucumber plant will shut down and never give you another cucumber for the rest of the year because he's like, I'm done, peace out, I don't have to do any more work. So wait until the end of the season for cucumbers especially to start letting one or two go that way. So when it's all gross, that's when you want it. And you scrape off the seeds, it's going to be all wet and gooey again, and then dry them just like the melons. So clean them off and lay them out on the plate and dry them. And that'll get you going. Greens. So this is annual single year greens. This is not the kale and the other bigger greens. These, a lot of them will go to seed and they'll bolt, which is what they call that, when it gets warm. So you don't have to really do a whole lot. Your lettuce will just put seeds down for you when it gets about June or July. And the pods will usually look similar to this or smaller like that. So you'll see them get a real tall stalk and they'll start making seeds. When it starts getting a little bit brown looking, chop it off, stick it in a bag and let it dry for more. And then you can shake it. Like all these bags, all the seeds are at the bottom when you shake them. And so it'll do that with the lettuce. The lettuce also looks like that. Or looks like a little grass seed. It's like long and skinny. So depending on what family your lettuce or your greens are from will determine what the seed looks like. And then those are pretty easy to do. Once your lettuce starts to bolt, it's going to be bitter. So yank it or let it go to seed. But otherwise, don't eat it. It's not very good. Okay, so how do you know when your seeds are completely dry? At least 1 to 3 weeks. If you haven't got at least a week in there for it to dry and it's not been crazy humid, you might be all right. If it's been crazy humid like we have here, go for longer or put it someplace that like it's air conditioning or you're doing something to help dry it out. Dried seeds will be very hard. If your seed is mushy, if you can take your fingernail and put a dent in your seed, it is not dry enough yet. If you can bite through it, if you can smash it easily and it goes whoosh, it is not dry yet. If you can bend it, it's not dry yet. So your seed, when it's really dry, is actually going to be kind of brittle. So when you smash it, it's going to crack. It's not going to mush or bend kind of thing. So that's a good way to do it. And if you're not sure, err on the side of a little bit longer and a little more drying because you don't want to lose all that work you've put into it and the genetic information because you should have waited 2 more days. And that would be really sad. Okay, how do you store them? So I store them in Ziploc bags. I'm not fancy in making my own little paper packages or anything like what you get. But I store them in Ziploc bags, and so you stick them in there, fresh out all the air and zip them shut. You can do paper envelopes, and the paper envelopes will keep it dark. This doesn't keep it dark, but it doesn't necessarily keep it dry because the humidity can still affect it. But it doesn't matter what you put it in as long as you can keep it dry, dark, and cool. For the consistency, like no change in temperature. You don't want it to be 90 degrees and then drop to 20, and then you want cool, consistently cool. If you put them in the plastic bags and they are not perfectly dry, you're going to run into problems with the mold. If you put them into paper packages and you're like, I'm not sure these are perfectly dry yet, the paper will be okay. The paper will actually pull out some of the moisture and you'll be okay. I have put seeds into envelopes. You know the envelopes you get in your junk mail? I save those and I use them. Let's see if I can find one or two. Yeah, here we go. Let's see, I have an envelope in there. I have things in paper. I have the little cute envelopes. You know, anything that holds a seed is fine. And then in other things, I just have it in a baggie with the label on it. But just be cognizant of, in like teeny tiny seeds, I always put those in plastic because they'll run away from you otherwise. You can add silica gel packets or desiccant into your area. As I was telling you before, I wouldn't put them on the seeds because I'm not really sure what's on or in desiccant and how that will affect it. But if you put it in the area, so like this is one of the drawers from my seed stash, and in the drawer I have a bunch of desiccant packets that I pull out of tennis shoes. Sometimes you get them in food, sometimes you get them all random places. And my packets never touch my seeds, so I'm not really concerned about where it came from. It's just my goal is that it sucks it out. If you want to buy desiccant, you can get that online. You can go to a craft store and get it. All those places you can have it. And then this is really, 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 really important. Table nets! You will not remember in 6 months what the heck this was that you put in the bag. You won't.
3 days later in some of us scar cases.
You just won't. So I label mine with the name of what it was, and most of the time I know what it is. Sometimes I don't. Where I got it from, it was a volunteer plant. So I don't remember what the original Asian red mustard plant was and where I got that from. That was the parent from this one. I just know that that's what it is. So it's a volunteer plant. I harvested it August 2019. So that means it came off the plant August 2019. I know how long it might be viable for. And I also know that next year, this is what I want to plant because it's my best seed, it's from this year. And then I have where I got it from, which is my garden. So sometimes I get seed from somebody at farmer's market and they have a really good something, and I save all the seed from it. And so I write all that information. Sometimes I have to go back and ask, what was it for? I do that. And then I will offer out from them where they got their seed. I can put that on there because then that creates a trail of the genetic code, just kind of like an antique, the story that goes along with your seed. And if you can find seed that is used to growing in our area, that seed's going to be a stronger seed than, say, a seed you're going to get from Georgia. We're nothing like Georgia. We might have humidity a little bit like Georgia, but like we have nothing else really much like Georgia. But something that grew, say, over in Cascade or something, or down in Zealand or wherever, that's going to have a much closer territorial similarity, so it will grow better in your area. It'll have the same, there's a word, I'm totally missing it, but it'll have the same, it'll be used to the area, it'll be used to how it's grown here. And then store the seeds in a cool, dry place. Make sure it's dark or no light on it. Some seeds germinate by light. So if yours happened to store it badly, and it was a little wet, and then it gets hit by light, it's like, party time, let's grew, and you don't want that to happen. So keep it dark. So my box is a little dark. It's on a shelf in my basement, never gets anywhere near any kind of bright light. And then it's cool because of the temperature is, ambient temperature is pretty common, stable, and then it's pretty dry. If you want to get like really fancy, the places that actually grow seed and sell seed, they have refrigerators and freezers and really specific kind of drying things and huge production that goes into it. You can store seeds in the refrigerator if you want, or the freezer. Both of those things work. Some people down south more store their seeds in the refrigerator because it's not going to be 110, 58% rain all the time. So it's just kind of where you are. Okay. Testing for viability. So once you've got your seeds, how do you know they're going to grow? So if you buy seeds, it usually on the package will say so much germination, and I think if it's below 80% germination, they're not even allowed to sell it, unless it's something extremely rare and hard to get. And then they have to tell you on the packet that really low germination, there's only 85 seeds available this year on the planet, $5 a seed, good luck. You know? But generally, the viability of it is tested. And so on the seed packet, it'll tell you what the germination rate is and the sell by or sell for date. And they cannot sell seed past a year for that year. So that's why you see a lot of seed packets go on sale, or they give them all away, because they cannot legally do that. It would not be fair for you to get a 10-year-old seed, and you have no control over that kind of thing. So the germination test for me, the best way is actually to start them growing. So what I do is I take a paper towel and I get it damp, I get a baggie, I put it in there, and then I put it at whatever temperature it needs to be, and then I see how many grow. So if I put 10 seeds in there, 7 of them grow, 70% germination, pretty good guess, kind of thing. So that is the best way to determine germination. There is the float test, and that depends on the type of seed. I've actually done experiments with it, so like the dry seed. This is dry. Does wood float?
Yes.
Yes. Does a log soaked with water float? No. So the wood did not change, just its content of water changed to determine if it floated or it sank. The seed's kind of the same way. So I was finding that, like, someone told me, well, if it sinks, it's good. If it floats, it's bad. And so, like, I'm thinking, I'm throwing out 90% of my kale seeds because they're all bad. Well, then I soaked them, and I had like 99% germination. So that test doesn't necessarily work because your seeds, if they're properly dry, are going to float. Or if it's a coconut, coconuts actually float too because they're full of air. But like if it's a big heavy seed, then it'll sink just because it's so massive. So for me, the viability test, the float test, if I soak it for a few hours and then I'm seeing things still floating, when I've tested it and planted them, the ones that floated after soaking didn't germinate, but the ones that all sank did. And so for me, soaking really helps the seed grow because it's getting that water that it needs. So you can do the float test, and some people swear by the float test. I'm a little hesitant because of the experiments I've run doing it and finding that it's not really, it depends on the seed. It depends on the circumstances. You know, if you're doing the float test on a tomato seed, which remember I said if it sank it was good and it floated it wasn't, well, it's already wet. It's already got the water in it. So that's why that works then. But at this point,
So is there a certain amount of time after you've done seed saving that you should wait before you try your viability test?
you can test for viability at any time. Like you can test for viability right off the bat if you want, and see if it's worth saving the seeds and doing all the work to save them. I'm like hate to kill plants, so I will often do my viability test at the same time I'm starting my plants. And so I'm like, hey, they grew, and I plant them. So I did did that this year. I doing a seed check and working my way through all the seeds and starting all the seeds. So I would start 10 or 5 of things depending on how old it was. And so yeah, I had 300, maybe 400 tomato plants germinate. I was like, no, this is not good. So yeah, so I did my germination tests at the same time as when I started the seeds.
But, so like, if I was saving seeds from this year, but I could test them in like November?
Yep. Yep.
Just to see if they're worth it?
Yep, because the viability of the seed to germinate will be the instant it is mature and ready to go. So unless it's a perennial and you need to do the stratification or scarification to it, and then you can
I
test
guess
it.
I just think seasonally, so it's like, well, I'll test in the spring before I plant. I can test them before.
You can test it at any time,
Yeah, okay.
especially if you're going to be giving seeds away or selling seeds. You really, really need to test them just so you're kind.
Probably should test my bean seeds that I didn't plant this year.
Beans actually last a really long time, so you'd probably be okay with those, but yeah. I think that was all of that. Aha, you made it to the end. Questions? Yes.
So part of all of this, you know, the Herrick Library has the seed catalog, seed library. And I'm interested in turning in some seeds because I got some heirlooms from them this year, and I grew a bunch of tomatoes. And I have my black Versace that I need to get the seeds out of.
Gotta make that brew for us first.
Oh yeah,
gonna walk in and be
that's
like,
slow part of coming, so I know what to do with them. Okay, so you taught me enough how to do that. But then I'll get a hold of what's your name?
Laura.
Laura.
Yes, yep.
Or Hannah downtown.
Or Hannah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's papers in the back that you
Okay.
fill out when you turn in your seeds.
You can
And
grab as many of these as you want.
yes,
too.
and it's one per kind of seed. So if you
Okay.
have 20 things you're giving
No, I
us,
don't.
or 5, or however many,
In fact, there's a couple I'd like to give comments that say, you should just take these out of the card file because they're not really, they germinated, but they're just not good tomatoes.
Interesting. Feedback is good.
Yeah,
so
no.
write that down. Like say I grew this tomato and it tasted like paste and it wasn't good. And that's a good thing to know because some people want a tomato that tastes like paste because they're making pasta or you know, like they're wanting it for the bulk, but not, it's not a good eating tomato.
And there's one in particular, it was called Yellow Candy Currant.
Oh, that one has a problem. You're right. So that is the one that they're trying to take the hybridized yellow sun gold and they're trying to dehybridize it. And so the gentleman doing it has not gotten all the way there yet. So mine was amazing. Yours was not.
Well, they grew just fine,
Yeah.
but they are like little yellow currants. They are like this big, and you can't, when you go to pick them off the stem,
The
the
skin
skin
comes off.
rips. And I realized after about 2 months of growing tomatoes, they were growing over the top of all the rest of my tomatoes. They were like, almost like an invasive. I got out the clippers and I'm like, you guys are done. And then ruthlessly pulling these. I only had 3 of them.
Yeah.
But I'm like, you guys are done. You're covering up all the other good tomatoes that I want to eat. And they were just the hardest things to harvest. They didn't taste bad, but you almost had to like picking grapes where you like cut the whole stem.
Wow.
And you could then like, you're just gonna go eat it, but you don't want to pick the little tomatoes.
Yes. Yeah.
And then, you know, for all that work of picking, you only have like this much.
They're the size of like
It's like
a
picking
pea.
wild blueberries, you know? It's like, wow, that was a lot of work.
Yeah. So those are actually someone's trying to get
Okay.
the hybrid-ish type. So he's working on the skin texture. He's working on the size.
Okay.
But you're
Yeah,
right.
I'll have to I can get feedback.
Right. And so from your plant, if you did not improve upon those sorts of things, that's not a plant we want to save the seed from.
Yeah, I'm not saving the seeds from.
So there might be somebody else whose skin didn't break
Yeah.
when we picked them. So we
Yeah.
want to grab more of those seeds. So that's the interesting thing about saving seeds and trying to work your way through is sometimes it's not always a great thing to save seeds from something because it's not worth saving seeds. It's not doing what you want it to do. And that's okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like I got onion seeds from the seed catalog and they never germinated, which tells me that onion seeds have a very short time that they're viable for, and that we probably got the seed donated, which means the onion seed was probably 2 to 3 years old. It is no longer viable at 3 years old, especially since I have no idea how it got stored and get transferred from here to here to here. So every person who got onion seeds from the catalog probably did not succeed, which is really sad because you have some poor person who doesn't know what they're doing. You're like, I'm gonna grow an onion, and nothing ever comes up. I'm like, I'm a terrible gardener. No, you just didn't have what you needed. And so if you're gonna give seeds away, please test their viability, because that would be really great. And that was one of my concerns with the seed catalog, or the seed library, is that we don't have the ability to test the viability.
And I had like Moscovich,
That's a good one.
Black Prim, Stucas, Yellow Candy Currant, Rose Divine, Green Versace, Black Versace. They're all ones, hybrid or heirloom that I got from the library.
And maybe that's something we need on the form. Like, did you viability test the seed, yes or no?
If you want to know what that means, please contact Shannon.
Right.
Well, when you get a seed packet from the seed catalog, you only get like 5 seeds
Right.
for this year's spring,
Yeah.
which was fine because I just wanted a sampling of different heirlooms.
Right.
Most people don't have room to have 42 tomato plants.
Yeah, I had 35.
So, yeah, and that is the growing pains of seed library.
Yeah.
As it's hit or miss sometimes.
It was great though. I mean, I love the seed library, and I was here. Were you here when Ben, when we had the opening of the seed? That was neat. And Ben's pretty neat.
That is cool.
And he's coming back in a few weeks.
Really?
October 16th?
Is that he's doing a talk?
He is. He's coming back on Tuesday, October 15th. So
And this is his book.
I got his book. I read his book.
So, yep. And I think you can actually bring your stories. So, like some of your stories that you have from your garden this
Yeah.
year, write them down. You can turn them into the library.
I was the first person to get the book out of the library that wasn't, what's her name?
Hannah.
Hannah. She had it, and I was talking to her, and she goes, I'll turn it in, and you put it on reserve.
I did that with Shannon too. I was like, I have the book. You can have it
I
now.
read it.
I know, I need to get it back in so that somebody else can read it. So,
If you don't know what we're talking about, we're here last year when Ben did so he wrote a book, the guy that helped open the library, seed library at Herrick.
He's a seed saver.
He's a seed saver.
And he's organic seed saver. So.
And he collected stories from around mostly the eastern part of the country of heirlooms, like down in Kentucky with some odd-looking bean that some family had in their family for 100 years. And, he talked to the family, and sometimes the families would write down their story about why they have a particular thing. And it's a collection of anecdotal stories about seeds. It's pretty cool.
I mean, food is probably one of the most important things. And so we have gotten into the habit of you go to the grocery store and you can get pretty much anything you want any time of the year, no questions asked. You're like, where's the bananas? Why are there no bananas? Bananas came from 3,000 miles away. There's no bananas today. So for us to pay attention to how to grow your own food and how to keep some of the different amazing heirlooms current, because a seed catalog can only grow so many types of things and sell so many types of things and do it well. And so that's why when you go to the store, there's 4 types of peppers, and there's 5 types of tomatoes, and there's 3 kinds of apples, and and so it's very limiting, and we've actually lost so much genetic information because we've lost so many varieties. And so people who go and chase down these places where someone's been keeping the seed for 100 years, that seed is nowhere else. I mean, probably in the community because they give away the seed, but that genetic information is nowhere else in the world. And that genetic information might have something that will help prevent Versillium wilt in that other, like there's some tomatoes that are resistant to Versillium wilt or to different funguses. Well, if we lose that genetic information, we will no longer have that to add back into the other types of plants that we want. So that's what makes it really cool, and seeds are so much fun, and you will never ever know everything, so you always run into cool things and interesting things, and reading the stories and hearing about things. It makes it fun. So yeah, this is all seeds we harvested from our garden this year. And this is from the garden across the street with the sunflowers. These are all little sunflowers in there that are growing. And so it's just really, it's really fun to do. And whether you save one seed or you never save any seed, but you honor the fact that these people saved them and I'm going to get the seeds from them because they did a really good job, that's also helpful. That's also supporting things. And then one last thing with seeds, I'm really careful about where I get my seeds from. I mean, if someone dumps a bunch of seeds in my lap, I will say thank you and walk away. But if I'm going to put money into it, I always try to go organic, because when you grow a plant to raise seed, you're growing extremely different than you are to raise it for food. Because that fruit on that plant has to last a really long time to get ripe. So like a cucumber, 60 days to harvest, so 2 months. 2 months, I've got cucumbers, here's your cucumber, we're done. Well, if I want to get seed from that cucumber, I gotta go 90 days. And how am I gonna keep that plant healthy? And how am I gonna keep that fruit growing and all of that? And then if they have to spray all kinds of stuff on it, if they're putting all that stuff into the environment, into the seed, all of that kind of stuff, when you purchase that seed, if you want to grow organically, that seed's used to being protected. It doesn't have the muscles and the ability to protect itself like if it had been an organic seed grown and with really, really good soil and the structure in the plant that wards off insects. A healthy plant will make insects run away. A sick plant attracts insects. It's kind of interesting. It's like it compounds the problem. So I'm always really careful about where I get seeds, and I love supporting small peoples and the small farmers. And so where I get seeds is like rareseeds.com, which is Big Creek. He has tons of small farmers growing seeds for him that they have one place that disseminates them all in their cool thing. And then you have Seed Savers and Southern Seeds Exposure. There's lots of different places you can get really fun seeds. So you don't have to go to a big box store and buy the only kind of carrot they have.
6-inch cucumbers.
Yeah. You know, find some fun stuff. Grow some crazy things. It may not taste good, but it'll be really fun to grow. And then save
One other just real quick story from my community garden. I had a squash came up in my compost pile, and it wasn't bothering anything, so I let it grow. Didn't know what it was. Thought it might have been a watermelon, and it just kept growing. And finally, it started to bear fruit. And when the fruit were about this big, they kind of looked like almost like a butternut squash.
Okay.
So I didn't know what it was. So I put some pictures up on one of the Facebook groups I belong to, is the Organic Gardener Podcast out in Missoula, Montana. And I put some pictures and said, I don't know what this is. It came up, no idea. Well, a day later, this squash expert from Hawaii, a woman out there, responded. She goes, that's Zucchino rampicante. And it's an Italian variety. And if you harvest it young, it's like a zucchini. It's green. And they get to be, I think, they were getting to be like this long, and they would get to be maybe this big around, and then their seed pod on the end, but the whole shaft was squash.
Wow.
And that thing took over my garden. I let it go. It was a fenced-in 25 by 30 garden. It grew all the way around the fence. At the end of the summer, when I finally pulled it out, it was over 50 feet end to end. And I harvested like 25 squash off that one plant. I let 2 of them go fully ripe, so I could get some seeds at the end. And I saved them. One of them ended up being hybridized, so that came out a little bit different the next year. The other one is fine.
Cool.
But the skin gets really hard at the end of the season, like a winter squash. Like I ate that one in like February, and it just sat on my counter in the kitchen back when I lived in Virginia. And it was like this big and this big around.
Did it taste good?
It was awesome. And even in February, it was very yellow inside, and it was greener when it was young. But I would cut them like inch thick, this big around, and just grill them. And it was a great zucchino rampicante. So
That is so cool.
I know.
But the community knew what it was.
Oh yeah.
And that's the cool thing, like Facebook, you can post almost anything and you'll get connected with
I mean, there's like
amazing
huge
people.
squash exhibitions out in California where, and I watched a video on YouTube of this woman at this, because she's an expert, she like flies there, and you know, they're just like bins, and like 500 bins of different kinds of squash, and it's just amazing.
Yeah.
How
And
much
that's,
squash there is out
that's
there.
what is really the importance of saving the seeds, is that, is you can have 500 different varieties of squash, and you go to the store and there's 7, you know? That's what's out there, but we have to keep it alive. And part of that is just going out and finding cool seeds and putting them in and saving them, and, you know, not everyone can save seeds, we understand that. I don't have room to buy, to have a 50-foot squash vine. I don't think you would let me
I
have
made
one.
sacrifices on other parts of the garden. And if it grew outside the fence, the deer got it, so
Yeah.
inside the fence I was safe, but.
I had a pumpkin, a pie pumpkin, and one of the really cute, like typical fall pumpkins. 2 of them start from seed and just take over the garden. I'm like, I need to blow you up, but you're so cool. Yeah. So, thank you. If
Well,
you
thank
have
you.
any other questions, you can contact me if you go to compostspot.com. That's my our website. If you're interested in the garden thing or things like the garden computer garden programs, contact us there and we can tell you where to either buy the Android one or get the free one. Kind of thing. That's just a plug that we talked about earlier. And then I'm a master gardener, but I also do garden coaching and landscape design and permaculture design. So if you're interested in any of that, you can talk to me about that too. But yeah, so thank you. Have a wonderful evening.